Hi, welcome to Audiobook Academy. This is a self-paced audiobook. There's no need to keep an eye on things. Just pay attention. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Ries and Jack Trout's book, The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, is a marketing classic. The 22 Irreversible Laws of Marketing, a synopsis. The law of leadership is a set of rules that govern how people behave in a given situation. There is a law called the Law of Categories. The law of the mind is a set of rules that govern how we think and behave. Perception is governed by the law of perception. The law of concentration. The law of exclusivity is a legal principle that prohibits the sale of something to someone else. Law of the ladder, law of the ladder. The law of duality is a principle that governs the existence of two things at the same time. There is a law known as the law of the opposite. The law of division is a legal concept. The law of relative position. Line extension is governed by the law of line extension. The law of sacrifice is a set of rules that must be followed. The law of attributes is a set of rules that govern how things are classified. The law of openness and transparency. Singularity is governed by the law of singularity. The law of unpredictability is a law that states that nothing is predictable. The law of success is a set of rules for achieving success. The law of failure is a principle that governs the course of events. The law of hype is a principle that governs the marketing of products and services. The law of acceleration is a scientific principle that states that time moves faster than light. The law of limitations on resources. The first chapter is titled The Law of Leadership. In conclusion, it is preferable to be first than it is to be better. It's much easier to get into someone's head first than it is to try to persuade them that your product is superior to the one that got there first. When operating in today's competitive environment, a Me Too product with a line extension name has little chance of becoming a large and profitable company. The leading brand in any category is almost always the first brand that comes to the prospect's mind when he or she is shopping for a product. Not every person who tries their hand at something will be successful. There is a problem with timing. Your first attempt may be too late. People have a tendency to stick with what they know. For example, one reason why the first brand tends to maintain its dominance is that the name becomes generic. For example, can you tell me how to make a Xerox? If you're launching the first brand in a new category, you should always try to choose a name that can be applied to a wide range of products. Marketing is a war of perceptions rather than a battle of products. The law of categories is covered in Chapter 2. Summary: if you are unable to be the first in a category, create a new category in which you can be the first. If you are unsuccessful in getting into the prospect's head, don't give up hope. Find a new category in which you can be the first to participate. It isn't nearly as difficult as you might imagine it to be. When launching a new product, the first question to ask yourself is not how is this product better than the competition, but rather first what? When launching a new product, the first question to ask yourself is not how is this product better than the competition, but rather first what? To put it another way, what category does this new product enter for the first time? Everyone is eager to learn about the latest developments. Only a small number of people are interested in what is better. It is important to promote a new category when you are the first one to enter it. In essence, you are not up against any competition. The law of the mind is covered in Chapter 3. In conclusion, it is preferable to be first in the mind rather than first in the marketplace. Being the first to market is important only to the extent that it allows you to gain entry into the minds of potential customers. Once a decision has been made, it is impossible to reverse it. Trying to persuade someone to change their mind is the single most wasteful thing you can do in marketing. In order to make a lasting impression on someone, you cannot worm your way into their consciousness and then gradually cultivate a favorable opinion of them over time. That isn't how the mind works at all. You must use explosives to gain entry into the mind. The law of perception is covered in Chapter 4. Summary: marketing is not a battle of products, rather, it is a battle of perceptions and attitudes. All that exists in the world of marketing are the perceptions that customers or prospects have of a product or service. The perception of something is the reality of it. Everything else is a trick of the light. To overcome your fundamentally incorrect marketing instincts, you must first understand how perceptions are formed in the mind and then tailor your marketing programs to those perceptions. Making matters even more difficult, customers frequently make purchasing decisions based on second-hand perceptions, which further complicates matters. Instead of relying on their own perceptions of reality, they base their purchasing decisions on the perceptions of others of reality. This is referred to as the everyone knows principle. Chapter 5, The Law of Concentration. Summary: the most powerful concept in marketing is the concept of owning a word in the prospect's subconscious. If a company can find a way to establish ownership of a word in the minds of potential customers, it can achieve incredible success. It's not a difficult word to understand. This isn't a made-up one. The simplest words are the most effective, especially those taken directly from the dictionary. The leader is the sole owner of the word that denotes the category. A word association test can be used to determine whether or not a leadership claim is valid. If you are not a leader, your words must be focused on a specific issue. Even more important, however, is that your word must be available in the category in which it appears. No one else will be able to get a hold of it. The most effective words are those that are straightforward and focused on the benefits. When it comes to marketing, it's always better to concentrate on one word or benefit rather than 2, 3, or 4, no matter how complicated the product or market requirements are. Words come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Benefit-related, such as the prevention of captivity; service-related, such as home delivery; audience-related, such as younger people; or sales-related are all possible options. Preferred brand. An organization may have to change its language at some point. You can't just take someone else's word for it. What will not work in marketing is abandoning your own words in favor of words that are already owned by others. You can't narrow the focus by emphasizing quality or any other idea that doesn't have supporters on the other side of the argument to counter. When you decide on a word to concentrate on, be prepared to fight off the lawyer's advances. Once you have made your promise, you must go out of your way to ensure that it is honored in the marketplace. Two companies cannot claim ownership of the same word in the minds of prospects. The law of exclusivity is discussed in Chapter 6. In summary, two companies cannot claim ownership of the same word in the prospect's mind at the same time. In the event that a competitor already has a word or position in a prospect's mind, attempting to own the same word or position is pointless. The law of the latter is covered in Chapter 7. In summary, the strategy you employ is determined by the position you hold on the ladder. It is not all products that are created equal. Prospects make decisions based on a mental hierarchy that they have established in their minds. In the back of my mind, there is a product ladder for each category. Each rung is labeled with a different brand name. Your marketing strategy should be based on how quickly you are able to get into the mind of the customer and, as a result, which rung of the ladder you occupy. Of course, the higher the number, the better. The mind is selective in its thinking. Prospects use their information ladders to decide which information to accept and which information to reject when gathering information. In general, a mind accepts only new information that is consistent with its product ladder in the category in which it is being evaluated. Everything else is brushed aside. Products that are purchased infrequently and that are associated with a negative experience typically have a limited number of rungs on their ladders. With no rungs on its ladder, the ultimate product, which provides the least amount of pleasure and is purchased once in a lifetime, has no rungs on it. In the prospect's mind, there is a relationship between market share and your position on the corporate hierarchy. You tend to have twice the market share of the brand below you and half the market share of the brand above you, depending on your position in the hierarchy. In the prospect's mind, 7 is the maximum number of rungs on a ladder that can be built. Sometimes your own ladder, or category, is too small for your own abilities. It is possible that being a small fish in a large pond is preferable to being a large fish in a small pond. In other words, being number 3 on a big ladder can be more advantageous than being number 1 on a small ladder at times. Think about where you are on the prospect's mental ladder before you begin any marketing campaign. Where are we on the ladder in our own minds? In the long run, every market becomes a two-horse race between two competing forces. The law of duality is covered in Chapter 8. Summary: in the long run, every market becomes a two-horse race between two opposing forces. A new category is initially viewed as a ladder with many rungs. The ladder gradually reduces in size to a two-rung structure. When you look at marketing from a long-term perspective, you will notice that the battle usually ends up being a titanic struggle between two major players, typically, the old reliable brand and the new upstart. Achieving third place in a maturing industry is a difficult position to be in at any time. Being aware that marketing is a two-horse race in the long run can assist you in developing a strategy for the short term. If you're aiming for second place, your strategy is dictated by the person in the first place. The law of the opposite is discussed in Chapter 9. As a second-place finisher, your strategy is dictated by the strategy of your opponent's leader. A company's strength should be turned into a weakness by the leader's weakness. You must first determine the essence of the leader and then present the prospect with the polar opposite of that essence. In other words, instead of attempting to be better, attempt to be different. It's frequently the new kid on the block versus the old standby. By establishing a competitive position against the leader, You divert business away from all other alternatives to the number one position. You must position yourself as a viable alternative. When a product becomes outdated, it frequently suffers some negative consequences. Marketing is frequently a delicate balancing act between legitimacy and effectiveness. The first brand to successfully capture a concept is frequently able to portray its competitors as illegitimate imitators of the concept. A good number two cannot afford to be overly cautious. The moment you stop concentrating on number one, you open yourself up to attack from not only the leader, but also from the rest of the pack. The law of diversion is covered in Chapter 10. An overview: a category will eventually split into two or more subcategories as time progresses. A category is initially considered to be a single entity. However, over time, the category becomes divided into various subcategories. A common mistake made by businesses is attempting to take a well-known brand name in one category and use the same brand name in another category at the same time. The fear of what will happen to their existing brands is what prevents leaders from launching a different brand to cover a new category. The importance of timing cannot be overstated. It is possible to be too early to capitalize on a new category. It is preferable to arrive early rather than late. Before anything else, you must be prepared to spend some time waiting for things to develop in order to get into the prospect's head. The law of perspective is covered in Chapter 11. Summary: marketing effects manifest themselves over a long period of time. The law of line extension is covered in Chapter 12. A strong and irresistible pressure exists to increase the value of the brand. The law of line extension is the one that is most frequently broken. When you try to be all things to all people, you will invariably find yourself in difficulty. Line extension is the process of using the brand name of a successful product to brand a new product that you intend to introduce. Line extension is almost never successful in the long run, especially in the presence of significant competition. Invariably, the brand that does not have a line extension is the market leader in any category. One of the reasons why top management believes that line extension is effective is that it can be profitable in the short term. The law of sacrifice is covered in Chapter 13. In order to obtain something, you must first relinquish something of value. It is essential if you want to be successful that you narrow your scope in order to establish a position in the prospect's mind. A new brand's success is dependent on its ability to be the first in a new category. Alternatively, the new brand should be positioned as a competitor to the incumbent. The law of sacrifice is the polar opposite of the law of line extension in terms of its effect. If you want to be successful in today's world, you must be willing to give something up. There are three things that must be given up: product line and market segment. Change is constant. If you want to be successful, you must reduce, not expand, the number of products in your line. The business world is made up of two types of organizations: large, highly diversified generalists and small, narrowly focused specialists. The most effective method of preserving a consistent position is to avoid changing it in the first place. The law of attributes is covered in Chapter 14. Summary: there is an effective attribute that is diametrically opposed to every other attribute. For example, because Crest owned cavities, other toothpastes avoided competing on cavities and focused on other attributes such as taste, whitening, breath protection, and so on. Marketing is a contest of ideas that takes place every day. You must have an original idea or characteristic that you can center your efforts around in order to be successful in life. A low price is required in the absence of such a document. This is a very low price. In exchange for admitting a negative, the prospect will respond with a positive. Chapter 15 is titled The Law of Honesty. In conclusion, when you admit a negative, the prospect will respond with a positive response. Honesty has a disarming effect. Every negative statement you make about yourself is immediately taken as gospel truth by those around you. Positive statements, on the other hand, are regarded as dubious at the very least. This is especially true in advertising. You must demonstrate that a positive statement is correct to the prospect's satisfaction. A negative statement does not necessitate the production of evidence. It's up to you whether to change your name or make fun of it if your given name is unattractive. It is impossible to ignore a bad reputation, and this is something you must do. Admitting that there is a problem is something that very few businesses do. When a company begins a message by admitting that it has a problem, people are more likely to open their minds almost instinctively. The law of candor must be applied with care and great skill if it is to be effective. Your negative must, first and foremost, be widely perceived as a negative. It needs to elicit an immediate response from your prospect's subconscious mind. What is this all about? Your prospect will wonder if the negative does not register with him or her quickly enough. After that, you must make a swift transition to a more positive frame of mind. The goal of candor is not to make people feel bad about themselves. The goal of candor is to set up a benefit that will persuade your prospect to take action. The law of singularity is discussed in Chapter 16. Summary: in each situation, only one action will have a significant impact on the outcome. The only thing that has ever worked in marketing is a single, bold stroke, according to historical precedent. You won't be able to predict the future unless you write down your competitors' plans. The law of predictability is covered in Chapter 17. Summary: unless you write down the plans of your competitors, it is impossible to predict the future. Marketing failures are frequently caused by an inability to predict the reactions of competitors. Coming up with the angle or word that will differentiate your product or company is an example of good short-term planning. Afterwards, you develop a coherent long-term marketing strategy that includes the development of a program to maximize that idea or angle. It is not a long-term strategy, but rather a long-term course of action. While it is impossible to predict the future, it is possible to gain an understanding of trends, which can be used to your advantage when change occurs. When you make the assumption that nothing will change, you are predicting the future just as accurately as when you make the assumption that something will change. Keep in mind Peter's law. The unexpected happens all of the time. One way to deal with the unpredictable nature of the world is to incorporate a high degree of adaptability into your organization. If you want to survive in the long run in your industry, you must be willing to change and change quickly as changes sweep through your industry. Success is frequently accompanied by arrogance, and failure is frequently accompanied by arrogance. The law of success is covered in Chapter 18. Summary: success is frequently accompanied by arrogance, and failure is frequently accompanied by arrogance. The ego is the greatest enemy of effective marketing. When people achieve success, they have a tendency to lose their objectivity. They frequently make decisions based on their own judgment rather than what the market wants. The element of success that causes a rash of line extensions is frequently the deciding factor. Whenever a brand achieves success, the company believes that the name is the primary reason for the success of the brand. As a result, they immediately begin looking for other products to brand with the name. It is more likely that you will fall into the line extension trap the more you identify with your company's brand or corporate identity. Brilliant marketers have the ability to think in the same way that their prospects do. They put themselves in the shoes of their customers. They don't impose their own view of the world on the situation. The bigger the company, the more likely it is that the chief executive has lost touch with the front lines. Failure is to be accepted and accepted. Chapter 19, The Law of Failure. Summary: failure is to be expected and accepted. Too many companies try to fix things rather than drop things. Admitting a mistake and not doing anything about it is bad for your career. A better strategy is to recognize failure early and cut your losses. Nobody has ever been fired for a bold move they didn't make. Chapter 20, The Law of Hype. Summary: a situation is often the opposite of the way it appears in the press. When things are going well, a company doesn't need the hype. When you need the hype, it usually means you're in trouble. Chapter 21, The Law of Acceleration. Summary: successful programs are not built on fads, they're built on trends. A fad is a wave in the ocean, and a trend is a tide. A fad gets a lot of hype, and a trend gets very little. Forget fads. And when they appear, try to dampen them. One way to maintain a long-term demand for your products is to never totally satisfy the demand. Chapter 22, The Law of Resources. Summary: without adequate funding, an idea won't get off the ground. Even the best idea in the world won't go very far without the money to get it off the ground. An idea without money is worthless. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Please don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. See you in next audiobook.